There we go. There's my audio. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the main event. My name is Joe Tillman, and this is the main event on the Hair Transplant channel, a hair transplant mentor production. If you don't know who I am or what I'm doing here behind this microphone, I am a professional in the hair transplant industry from over the past 20 years. And I started out as a repair patient, having my first two surgeries 29 or 30 years ago. I need to double check that out. I keep saying I need to double check that, but I haven't so far. And I got to tell you, it was pretty rough being a patient with two bad hair transplants in your 20s. Now, keep in mind, this was also during the 1990s, where it wasn't quite the 80s with the big hair that was going on back then, but hair was different. Like you were defined by your hair more so then than you are now. And what I mean by that is, you couldn't get away with a shaved head because back in the 90s that meant that you were a skinhead. There was a very negative connotation with that kind of look. So I'd gone through my 20s. I had my first two surgeries, and it was the surgeries themselves that actually, I can't verify this, but looking back on it, they actually exacerbated my hair loss condition through the phenomenon known as shock loss. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I did notice that my hair loss had really picked up to the point where I didn't really notice it that much in the beginning. I got some stories about that are separate. But after I had my first two surgeries, that's when it started to really manifest. And the way it manifested was the work that I had done was, was behind my native hairline. And you have to understand that the graft work, the incisions that were being made for the grafts back in the 90s were quite large compared to what one might get today. And when you have little to no hair loss and you start placing grafts into these areas, that's where shock loss comes in. There are two types of shock loss in the recipient area, and this was most likely a combination of both types, which would be transection and simply a major disruption of the blood flow because of the trauma of the surgery to begin with. I was 25 a few years later, and I was a Norwood 4, but the entire front of my scalp, the hairline that I had, was made up of this graft work because my hairline kept receding backward and my crown started to open up. And I had this pretty still strong bridge of hair going across the top of my scalp. But I'll have to find one of these photos. I think I got one on my website somewhere, hairtransplantmentor.com. And I remember seeing in this photo of me on stage because I used to act in college. I was an actor. And I remember seeing this photo and I thought, what the hell was I thinking? Anyway, but went through my 20s and it kept getting progressively worse. And I even remember being confronted by coworkers that thought they were, speaking to me in confidence, like, you can tell me, did you have something done? That was tough. And that kind of leads into the title of today's show, where I don't remember what the hell I wrote. Hair loss and hair transplant questions. But the thumbnail I wrote, if you're thinking of a hair transplant surgery, stop. And I'll get to calls in just a moment. But it made me, I think about this every once in a while, and I talk about it in most of the shows about, not jumping into surgery too quick, blah, blah, blah. But today I kind of felt it a bit more because I was reflecting on my own experience. I was going through the memories in my databanks, thinking about it. And what prompted that was seeing some stories online. Some of them, I kind of shook my head thinking, this guy has no clue what it's like to go through a bad hair transplant. And then others where it's like, okay, this guy does know. And it just struck a chord with me more so today than some other days. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today, where, and this is, a call-in show, so you guys can call in and share your stories. I think it's important for people to have an outlet like this where you can share your stories. And, for years, we've had a great outlet for you on Fridays on The Bald Truth, the only resource of its kind. But now you have more of an opportunity to hear other stories and to you yourself can share your stories here on the main event, because I'm doing this Monday through Thursday. And I don't know. I'm just kind of in that mood where I'm thinking more about the repercussions of bad surgery, actual bad surgery. And I don't consider a surgery where maybe it's not as dense as you want it to be a bad surgery. Well, scratch that. It's not that it's not a bad surgery, but it's not one that warrants the title of, or the label of, repair. Repair to me is when you have a hair transplant surgery and everyone knows it. There is no denying that you had a hair transplant. Just because it's thin doesn't mean it's obvious. It just, the work can still look natural. And if it does, and it's not, a density that you feel is sufficient, or maybe it is a low density transplant, either by design or not, it just looks like you have thin hair, which is natural. Now, if the grafts that are placed are pluggy and they're, kind of wonky angles and directions, and that's a different story. That's what I'm talking about. That's a repair. But I just started thinking about that today, and so that's the reason for the thumbnail that I made today. Dealing with hair loss? ? Considering hair transplant surgery? ? Stop. And you need to stop, because you may not have thought of all the downsides of hair transplant surgery. And it ties into my very first hair transplant class I put out 6 years ago. No, God, 7 or 8 years ago. 2015, I think, maybe 2016. Do not have a hair transplant. And the point of that video, which I think it's got about 500,000 views, was that if you hadn't thought about the downsides of surgery, then don't have a hair transplant until you have learned about these downsides and have come to grips with the fact that it may happen to you. You may experience some of these downsides. So that's just it. That's my introduction rant for the day. This is a toll-free call-in show, and someone is taking advantage of that. All right, let's take this call. Hey, you're on the main event. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Joe, it's Nico.
Hey, Nico, buddy, how you doing?
How do you do? How are you?
I would say I can't complain, but today I just choose not to.
Right on. I could.
Yeah. What's going on, man?
I think that's part of your what you were talking about in your thumbnail. I'm just so curious how you coped for 10 years. I mean, when we talk about stopping and thinking about what you're doing, and people want to get the dream of getting some hair on their head, it's so interesting how people forget about their own personalities going into it. And I know your first class, and vid about don't do it. Mm-hmm. I just am fascinated by, because you seem generally like not very self-conscious of a person to begin with. I mean, you were acting, like you said, and you had coworkers go up to you. I mean, I just don't, and I've been hiding in my hat ever since my surgery. And it's just fascinating how, I'm wondering how you coped for so long. Like, I don't imagine you being on a antidepressant or anything like, you know what I mean? It's just, people are not aware of how taxing emotionally it is. Even if they see that first vid, they're like, oh, I'm going for it. I'm good. It'll be good. I've seen some bad cases online, but that's not me. It's fascinating shit. Sorry for the language.
No, no, it's fine. It's sometimes I think about it myself, and I have mixed feelings, and I even have memories that, because it was so long ago, it's like sometimes the memories pop up. It's like, God, it was brutal. But when I really think about that time in my life,
mm-hmm.
I realized that when I went into the surgery itself, or the first surgery, I wasn't really devastated by hair loss.
Right.
My buddy and I, my best friend from high school, we're still friends, even though people say I should have kicked him to the curb. He was a lot more concerned about it than I was, and the whole reason why I even had surgery was because we were roommates at the time in this shithole of a house next to the college campus that we lived in, or that we attended, and
right.
he was like, "Hey man, I need you to go with me down to Knoxville in Tennessee."
Crazy.
And we're like 2 hours away. And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I'm going for a hair transplant consultation." I'm like, "A what?" And he goes, "Yeah. I don't want to go alone. You come with me." I was like, "Okay, fine." And I was the only person he ever confided in about his hair loss, and and we'd talk about it. So anyway, long story, we go down, and we loved road tripping anyway. It was only 2 hours, but still, when you're in your late teens, early 20s, that's a road trip. And
hell yeah.
And we do stuff like that all the time. We'd hop in the car just on a whim and go to the beach 6 hours away. Sleep in the car for the weekend and just
for sure.
have a blast. But anyway,
that was me.
So yeah. So went down, and this is something that's very clear in my memory. Walked into this small office, and I noticed all the pictures on the wall, and it was all these celebrities, and the celebrities were people that you'd never like. Why does he have pictures of celebrities on the wall? And it's to imply that he'd actually done work on these people. And I don't recall if maybe I did ask him. I remember Alan Jackson being on the country music star Alan Jackson being on the wall, and a bunch of other people. But I don't know if it was a marketing, like if they were just trying to purposely mislead you, or maybe he did work on it.
Probably.
Because I do remember hearing years and years ago that he was one of the celebrities that was rumored to have had work done, but you never saw it because they always wear a cowboy hat because it was supposedly bad work. I don't remember where I read or heard this, but anyway, I digress. So he's talking to my buddy, and then he looks at me and he says something to the effect of, "And we can do the same thing for you." And I was like, I'm not here for a consultation. Like, I'm not really. He goes, "Well, you are losing your hair." I was like, "Well, yeah, kind of, but really? Like, you can do something for me?" Like, he talked me into it, basically. And I remember thinking naively how awesome it would be to have a stronger hairline or a stronger head of hair, and not have to worry about these things that were kind of bugging me, but not such a big deal. But you get into that mindset. It's like, wow, okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. Yeah, we're going to do this, man. We're going to do this. This is, okay, cool. Yeah. So
you got played.
So then we both made the appointment, and we both went down, and it was sold to us as a get it done on the same day type of thing. And there's only 3 people in the office. It was the doctor and his wife and his daughter. They were the nurses. And so they did 2 surgeries side by side, not literally side by side, but in 2 different rooms with 3 people.
Insane.
So he took out the strip on both of us, and then one of them helped with the closure, and then they chopped them up because these were mini micrographs, not follicular units, where you need a microscope or even loops. I don't even know if they had loops back then. And then they just started, jabbing in these grafts into my existing hair, which was not thin, by the way.
Ugh.
It was behind my hairline, my already existing hairline. They went behind it with the idea that, well, and he told me, well, as you recede, you can recede into what I've given you so that you'll never be bald. And it wasn't until my second surgery, and the whole reason why I had a second surgery is because I told him I wasn't happy with the first one, and neither was my buddy, who also went for a third one for the same reasons. But that's when I asked my first intelligent question: what happens when I lose more hair? And he looked me straight in the eyes and he said, "You won't lose more hair, and if you do, it won't be until you're 50."
Played.
3 years later, I was a Norwood 4. And so, to answer your question, how did I deal with it? It was one of those things. I don't know. I deal with things differently than a lot of people. Where,
for sure,
in situations like this, it's like, well, if I can't do anything about it, I just bury it. I bury it inside, and I just go through my day, and I compartmentalize things mentally and emotionally. Stick them away into a box, and that box will be opened when I would be speaking with someone, and I'd be looking them in the eye, that's one of my normal things. I always look people in the eye when I'm talking to them, and they wouldn't. They'd be looking at my hairline. And I'd see it, and I'd notice it. And even then, that got to be something that I built up a thicker skin because of it.
Sure.
But then it would be the odd times when someone would actually say something like, "What's going on with your hair?"
Right. Yep.
And that's when it would, like, oh God, it's like a punch in the gut. And I've told a couple stories where I got into actual, I'll say, heated discussions with colleagues, and as a slight, they would throw that in my face. And at one time, I almost came to blows with someone. But it was tough for the first several years after that. Where when I was working, I wouldn't take jobs where I couldn't wear a hat. Or sorry, no, I had no choice in my profession where I was taking jobs where I couldn't wear a hat because I was in the restaurant business mostly, and I wasn't working, like, you didn't wear a baseball cap or a hat at all in the kind of restaurants I was working at, and a lot of times it was, where you got a napkin over your arm and your proper service,
Sure.
And other times I was working in healthcare as a technician, physical therapy. I worked in a burn unit at a hospital, taking care of patients at one point.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I don't talk about that part of my life very much. But yeah, in my 20s, I worked for several years as a physical therapy technician. And so that's where I get some of my medical exposure from working in hospitals. But I couldn't wear a hat there either. And so, yeah, you just learn when you're kind of like me, you just kind of learn to compartmentalize things and not think about it and suffer in silence. Like, I'd go home and it's like, Jesus, how do I style my hair today? When I get up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's me, man. I mean, it's rough.
Yeah.
I maintain the facade of being pleasant, and I am, like, I'm amiable. You know what I mean? But I go, 4 years now. I'm like suffering in silence. Go home, and with the condition on top of it, it's like I'm just fascinated by your story still, even though I know most of your stories. Even going back to when the high schooler would go behind you and say, you. I know all of your stories.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's just a decade is a long time, so I'm just curious how you coped, and I don't know, just was curious. Thought I'd call in and as I suffer in silence, but I'm dealing. It's tough. So and I appreciate the what you offer in your show and the forum, and it's helpful for sure for someone like me, and I appreciate the topic of the day.
Well, thanks. I appreciate your support as always. And one thing I've learned, I learned through something traumatic I went through about 20 years ago, before I had my repair surgery, is discussing, just talking, can really help to lift that poison out of your system. But even if you can't, even if you can't speak about it, what I was doing was I was writing about it. Where
your blog?
No, before the blog.
Oh,
This wasn't about my hair loss. This was about something else traumatic I went through. Where I would actually, this is when I was living in Seattle at the time, and I would go to my favorite coffee shop that would be open till like 3-4 in the morning, and I would just sit there and write. I've never talked about this before publicly, but I would go and I'd write. I'd just write out my feelings, because I didn't really have anyone to talk to at the time.
Sure.
And so my writing actually turned into prose.
Mm-hmm.
And then my writing turned into poems, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this for about a year. And I got to the point where I was writing so much. I was in this coffee shop every night. 6 days a week, roughly. Sometimes a little less, maybe 5. And by the time this all came to a conclusion, I was actually going to poetry slams, and I would stand up on stage and read my work, read my writings in front of strangers out loud.
Wow.
And that was extremely therapeutic for me.
That's awesome.
And then when I got into had my first repair with Dr. Wong, my blogging was an extension of that. I'd already learned how to put my feelings onto paper, so to speak, as it were, and that translated into my original blog, and Joe Tronic was born. And and the sharing of that, of my recovery process and the experience, and taking all the photos, which was completely new to me, not just me, but everyone, because no one was taking digital photos. I had a 3.1 megapixel Fuji FinePix camera, which is an amazing little, it was an amazing little camera back then, considering what it was putting out. And that in and of itself was also therapeutic. It helped to lift that pain of the previous 10 years off my shoulders of having a bad hair transplant, 2 bad hair transplants. So
wow.
That's why, like, I've recommended this to people in the past when they're trying to deal with this and other things, is if they don't have anyone to talk to, just start writing.
Yeah.
Like,
I do that with music. I've been playing guitar for about 30 years, so I'm pretty good without sounding modest.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have my outlets, creatively and otherwise.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear from you and other people like you who've gone through some stuff. Specifically, I've gone through plenty of other traumas that are crazy, and it would seem like this is nothing, but it's since it's taken me out so much socially, and with work as well and all that stuff. I'm just trying to hear other people's stories, I guess. So that's just as helpful as talk and being creative and all that stuff.
The problem that we're going through is, we have a surgical procedure with a goal in mind, and that is to look normal but more acceptable in our minds.
Yes.
And then when the outcome is the exact opposite of that, when it looks not normal,
right?
It's a wedge in our reality that we can't. It's a splinter in our reality that we can't pull out.
Totally.
And we're reminded of it, like looking in the mirror every morning.
Constantly. Yeah.
Is like pushing that splinter in just a little bit more. It hurts. It's painful, right?
Very.
So that's my new analogy for the day. I just pulled that one out of the ether. but I think it fits. It's a splinter in our reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a position where I can at least fake it. I can't really do the makeup thing or, spray, cover, spray in a can kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of
hair in a can.
Inflammation.
Yeah.
Yeah, hair in a can. So my results are okay. I'm glad. Like, I didn't end up with necrosis or something really, 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 really fucked up. Sorry for the language again. But there's still that, like, I have that same effect where I look at what could have been. I imagine what could have been, and I'm dealing with what is. It's, sorry, I'm just venting. But
no worries.
I just I was just curious more about how you dealt over those 10 years, and I appreciate you giving me some insight into how you coped.
Well, Nico, you've got a story of your own, and I'm glad that you've been calling into the show over the past few years, with me and Spencer, and you do sound better than I think you've sounded in a long time, and I think you mentioned in a previous call not too long ago that you are in a better place, and that's fantastic. I'm really glad to know that, and but look, I mean, it is what it is. We all deal with things in different ways, and sharing like this can help people maybe recognize or consider something that they hadn't considered before as to how to deal with things, or just hearing about other stories is
100%.
comforting, because
I don't mind being
it helps you realize that you're not the only one.
Right. Yeah. And I don't mind being content, so to speak. You know what I mean? Other people should know what's up. Going from a very healthy ego to one that's not, though I'm very, go with the flow and I'm very chill about everything. It's just people should know what's up and what could go wrong. So I'm still in the game, and to be continued. I'll call again, obviously, and appreciate everything, man. I want to give somebody else a chance to call in. And,
all right. Well, I appreciate it, Nico.
Thank you so much.
Take care, buddy. Good hearing from you. Thanks for the call.
All right, man. You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Phone number is 1-833-563-4247, toll-free in North America, and using a call app anywhere from the world. Got another call. And thanks to Nico for that phone call. That was a great one. Hey, you're on the main event with Joe. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
It's Morty from Brooklyn.
Hello, Morty from Brooklyn. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Just watching your show. I managed to get in. You've got to. I don't know if you can change the phone system that you have, but it would be nice to be in queue like Spencer's setup works. Unfortunately, I see it'll ring in the middle of the conversation, which when I call in, I don't want to interrupt the other person, but I know that I have to time it exactly right to call in so that nobody jumps in front of me. But whatever. Anyway.
I'd fix it if I could. I know. Yeah, you're not telling me anything I don't know, my friend. I know. I've had people saying that the ringer's too loud. Yes, I know. Okay. And it'd be great to have a hold system, but it took me a while just to get this phone system set up. And so, with everything else going on, I'd love to be able to have the time to find an alternative resource and then I'd love to keep this number to port it over to the new service. So. Yeah, that's something that's in the pipeline. I am hoping to get that resolved soon. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see when it happens.
Anyway, I'm just glad that you're doing the show every day, and I can only imagine how much time out of your day it's taking to do this. And I mean, it's what Spencer does times 6. Because you're basically doing this, 5 days a week. You're doing this 4 days on the main event and then the 5th day with the Ball Truth. So my hat's off to you, brother. You're putting in a lot of hours, and I know I certainly appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, listen, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I'm doing it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's because I had the request. People were asking, well, when is it on? I'd say, well, Fridays, not any more than just once a week. And I've had people tell me that also it would probably be a good idea to do it. And I was very reluctant to for a long time, although I wanted to, simply because of the time commitment. And from 3 to 5 every day, that's my prime business time, right? Where I'm, talking to the doctors I work with, and then dealing with, personal stuff and other, business stuff. And, there's a lot going on. And especially right now, because I got a contractor just 2 walls over for me right now, sanding and priming my walls after there was some flood damage from almost 2 months ago. Fingers crossed, it'll be wrapped up this Friday. So I'm nearing the end of that, but it is a commitment, and I decided to do it. But the benefits are showing because my subscriber frequency, or the frequency of people subscribing, has increased exponentially. So that's nice. That's a nice benefit. But I am getting a lot of great calls, like a lot of people that I've never heard, that have never called the main show on Friday before. It's nice. I'm happy with things are going. It's an evolution of not just my skill set, being able to talk to people and prevent too much dead air, but also of my technology. Like I've got everything I need to run actually a pretty big production, but I don't have the experience of running productions. So it's a learning process on my end, and a pretty steep learning curve at that, including the phones, including the sound, and the software, all running into YouTube. And I have bigger ambitions. I plan on streaming live through additional outlets other than just YouTube simultaneously, and I know how to do that. It's just setting it up is time consuming. So yeah. I appreciate the comments and the support. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, you're doing wonderful. You're doing good work. I mean, the same thing I've told Spencer, I'm going to tell you. And obviously, you're doing a lot more in terms of volume, anyway. And I appreciate that a lot. So the reason I called, in addition to just kind of giving you guys a call, because it's always good to talk to you, Joe, is there's this question which I've had rolling around in my head for some time, and I asked this question to Dr. Cole, and I didn't really find the answer to be terribly satisfactory, so I figured I'd ask you. Mm-hmm. So, what's the difference between a beard hair and a head hair? Scientifically, morphologically, why is it that if you've got a beard hair and you expose it to DHT, it gets stronger? But if you have a head hair and you expose it to DHT, it gets weaker. And this is something that, I haven't gotten a good answer from anyone on this. And I figured, you know what? I'm sure it's a question that may have crossed your mind at some point. What do you know and what do you think? And, what do you have to say about it?
Well, it's a great question. And I'll be up front and say, I don't know. Logically, when you look at the very basics of the question, the answer would be, well, donor scalp hair, or some scalp hair, has the receptors on the cellular level that make that follicle sensitive to DHT in a negative way, whereas say body hair or beard hair, what have you, has, I'm speculating, but it could have the opposite receptor. That's not only not sensitive to DHT, but in a negative way, but is sensitive in a positive way, where it opens up blood flow somehow to that follicle. I don't know. I'm pulling it out of the ether, but it's a very simplistic.
You repeat what I just said with different words, which is to say that your beard hair gets stronger when you expose to DHT, and your head hair gets weaker when you expose to DHT.
It's like I don't know. Like I don't know why that is. And I can't say that that's the case for everyone.
Gotcha.
I actually don't think it is universally accepted or universally applied to everyone's beard and chest hair, body hair in general, that it is increased when exposed to DHT as opposed to decreased on scalp hair. Yeah.
It's like I said, it's one of those things that makes you think, with all of this obsession over the androgen receptor, right? I mean, we were talking about this new medication, which is all about degrading the androgen receptor, or we're talking about 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, which, removes the the DHT that binds to the androgen receptor, or we're talking about anti-androgens, which bind to that same receptor. And it's just like, it's all about this receptor. And it's like, well, hang on a second. We know that those beard hairs, they obviously have to have, well, and again, maybe I'm wrong about this too, but they have to have androgen receptors, which make them stronger. So to me, it's an insufficient explanation to say that it's all about, that it's all about DHT. There must be some downstream process. And again, there's at least some hinting of this, why, for example, things like the metaprost and latanoprost work the way they do, is it has something to do with another substance which has some other binding. It involves another not a hormone, but another binding site that makes the hairs grow and it's a completely different mechanism of action. And that seems to work in both places. And minoxidil. So minoxidil is another one where it'll grow hair regardless of which hair it is. So, it's just kind of, to me, it's an open-ended question. I mean, you've looked at beard hair and scalp hair under the microscope, right?
Yes.
And from your peepers, they look pretty much the same, don't they? Or do they?
Well, if you look at the two resources from the same patient, they do not look the same. But
really?
but they do. But if you look at a beard hair, independent of having looked at a scalp hair from the same patient, unless there's a very specific characteristic, even then, no, it would be anyone would be hard pressed to say, oh, this is definitely a beard hair, because it's a follicle. It just might be a bit more coarse than the scalp hair. It might have more of a curl than the scalp hair. Same thing with chest hair. Chest hair actually would look more identical to scalp hair in a lot of patients, including myself, even under microscope, as far as just which ones from the scalp and which ones from the body, from the chest, and you do have them side by side, it would be very difficult to discern the difference. But back to the original question, though, I was also thinking, you have to look in the sexual development arena, hormones and such, because men need DHT to actually transition in, through puberty. That's one of the things that's helping to kick that in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think your answer as to what's going on with, some patients where it doesn't grow as well without DHT, look in that direction. Let's try to find that correlation, and that would be more of a path for your answer. But I've not paid much attention to it, because body hair transplantation in general is not common, despite what you'll read or see on Instagram or on various forums or Reddits. It's not that common, and there are very few doctors that do it, that perform hair restoration surgery with body hair on a regular basis. And regular basis, being once or twice a week, roughly.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, but I've seen some pretty amazing results. If you look at Adrian, for example, he had some amazing result with body hair. But you're right. I mean, body hair is, and again, this is based on what Dr. Cole has told me. It's definitely a distant third down the road in terms of preference for transplantation, because it doesn't grow as long. I believe you have a higher number of follicles that are in telogen. One of the things that Dr. Cole has told me when doing body hair is he asks patients to shave to the skin 3 weeks before surgery, so that at the date of surgery, he can actually see which of those follicles are actually actively in anagen. Yeah. And what he understands that those are in a better position to survive the transplantation process, and also to actually yield successful grafts.
Yeah, that was the shaving protocol first. I think first introduced by Arvind Paswal out of India when he was first getting into. Dr. Cole might have come up with that as well around the same time, or maybe afterwards. I don't know. But I remember my first memory of that was from Dr. Poswell, where he was really pushing, and it makes sense. Like, you know, when you're dealing with a questionable resource, you want to look for the hairs that you know are at least an antigen during surgery, and you can see the robustness of that hair before you extract it. So, yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I think you're well suited to find the answer, or something more specific than what you've found already, or what I've been able to provide. So maybe you should take that on as a project and give us a call at a future date to update the viewers. I'd like to know. They'd like to know.
I would love to know. I mean, you know, like I said before, it seems to be, and again, it's gnawing at me, because it's one of those things where it's like, I asked one of the pioneers in the field, and I've asked you, and nobody has a really good answer as to why that is. And more importantly, in my opinion, you know, if you're going to talk about things that mess with RNA, things that mess with DNA, like this new Cosmo RNA stuff, you know, somebody should be looking at, you know, is it a flip of a switch in the particular cells to make them behave, you know, make head hair behave like beard hair, or beard hair behave like head hairs? If that's something that can be that precise. What little I know about genetics is it's not nearly that simple. But, you know, it's one of those questions that jumps out at me as being, you know, something that it's just something that makes you think. So,
are you think is a question that makes you think because you're looking to take advantage of said resources for your own case for future work?
No, I think it's too soon, Joe. I mean, here I am at month 5, and I'm just enjoying life. I mean, the only thing I will say, and it's funny because, you know, I don't know if it was the patient that you just had, or it was another. It may have been some of the recordings I was listening to yesterday, where, you know, you talk about patients' hairlines, and you had talked about your own hairline. I think that's right. This was yesterday. You were talking about how you're toying with the idea of possibly lowering your hairline a little bit. At least I think that's what you said. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, and it's, you know, it's also something that I think about a lot, is like, you know, I look at the before and after pictures, and I'm just totally impressed with what I have. But at the same time, I look at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, you know something, that hairline, if it was like just, you know, it was just like a centimeter lower, just a little bit lower, it would look so much better. And I'm thinking to myself, God almighty, I've got fucking hair greed. You know,
yep.
And
welcome, my friend. The water is warm.
You know, it's like, excuse my language. It's like, gosh darn it. You know, I really do not want to be feeling this way.
Yeah.
You know, because I could just be, you know, it's the old story. Just be grateful for what you got and enjoy the hell out of your life and move on. And, you know, to some extent, I haven't been calling the show as much, and I've been trying to do other things in my life. But again, you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, wow, you know, that looks really great, except ta-da.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, who are you talking to over here? Huh? Who are you talking to?
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
But look,
anyway, I'm going to let.
I'll like I've gone on record before, and I'll say it again. I wouldn't have had nearly as many surgeries as I've had if my desk wasn't 30 feet away from an OR, you know, operated by one of the greatest surgeons on the planet.
Yep.
You know, opportunity knocks. You open that door. And, you know, in every surgery I had, well, I can't say every surgery, but most of the surgeries I had did create a very quantifiable aesthetic improvement for me. And the ones that didn't, that I just left out, or I side mentioned, those were experiments, like literally experiments. Like Dr. Wong would come in and say, hey, or actually it was Dr. Hassan would come in and say, hey, Joe, would you mind coming and let me do experiment? Try to take some FUE grafts from you. I was like, sure, let's do it. and he did it once, and it hurt like a son of a.
Really?
Oh my God!
He didn't give you a ring block or anything like that. He just went in cold.
Well, I didn't need a ring block because it was I wasn't having hairline work done. It was just he was taking some extractions out. He did anesthetize the area, and then he placed them somewhere in my crown. I have no idea where, and I have no idea if they grew. No idea. But it was actually the recovery. It wasn't the surgery itself. I don't even call it a surgery, but it was a recovery that hurt, and I don't know why. It was painful as F. It was like, what in the actual F did he do? I had no idea what the pain was from. But the experiments I did with Dr. Wong was we did an actual chest hair experiment, and this was like 2005, I think. And I was the second one he'd ever done. There was another patient that was kind of famous on the forums. His name was Poet. He's a really nice guy. And he's actually got his own YouTube channel now. I forgot. He's in Thailand. What the hell's the channel name? I forgot. If I think of it later, I'll put it down in the description. Really nice guy, like one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And he's got the most unusual and crazy story about hair loss and hair transplant surgery as far as his history goes of anyone I've ever met, bar none. It involves a gunshot to the head.
Oh my God.
And
are you not talking about what's his name? International, right? Joe.
And Dr. Woods. All those are the two crazy things that are in this guy's story. And body hair.
Jeez.
Anyway, Dr. Wong did some work on him as well, and I can say that because it's public record at one point. But I was the second one, and so they were taking out grafts from my chest. I still have the scars, big punch days, and the idea was we'll use a bigger punch so that we can make sure we get a healthy graft out. So it was like 120 or so extractions, and out of those, maybe 87 looked like they were worth using. They weren't, emulsified from the process of taking them out. And this is with a manual punch, by the way, not a machine, because there weren't really many machines out there. And 27 grew, and they're still growing.
At how many?
About a third of them grew, about 30% growth, and
that's
not terrible for the first. Like, there was no FUE being done in the clinic anyway, so it's like, sure, whatever. And I just moved on with it, but I still have the scars on my chest. So there was that. There was a scar revision, and then so a couple of them had zero aesthetic benefit whatsoever. They're just guinea pig sessions.
At least you didn't go backwards, right? So that's important.
Exactly.
Aside from the hole in your chest or whatever. Yeah, it's funny because I've got some funny scars myself. I get scars from when we did the fat extraction.
Really?
Yeah. Because the first round of fat extraction, the fat extraction was done, I guess, closer to the hip. And then the second time we did fat extraction, we did it through the navel. And so those you don't see.
I have that disturbs me. The thought of having something extracted through the navel, that doesn't entice me in the least. It's disturbing to me. That's very disturbing.
If you think that's disturbing, you should see what the cannula looks like.
It's like, oh hell no, oh hell no. Jesus Christ. Anyway, the things we do. All right, my friend.
Right?
My God. Wow.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
Big ups on you, buddy. Yeah. Thanks for calling, Morty. Good hearing from you. We'll talk to you later.
Later. Ciao.
Bye. Toll free 1-833-563-4247. I'm here to answer your questions about hair loss and hair transplant surgery. Today's subject is, if you're thinking about hair transplant surgery, stop. Because you might not know what you're getting yourself into. And today more so than ever, because there's so many clinics out there doing just terrible, terrible work. I never ever thought in my life that I would see a day where the state of the industry as a whole would be worse than it was when I first started out 20 years ago. That's not the way it's supposed to work, people. You're not supposed to go into an industry and watch it devolve over time as opposed to improve. And it can be argued that, well, FUE is here now, and it's the preferred procedure, and it's done by most clinics, so it has gotten better. No. All it's done is it's made it easier for inexperienced, unaware, situationally unaware people to get into the industry much easier. I actually predicted this would happen a long time ago. It's like, well, all you need is to lease a small office. It's got 3 rooms, one being a reception, the other being a procedure room, the other being maybe the office for the main doc. That's it. Come in, do this little surgery. That's not really a surgery, according to them. You're out. You got a bunch of little holes around your head, and that's it. There's no removal, like an actual surgery, removal of a strip. You don't need to invest in the equipment with, 5 or 6 microscopes for a staff of at least 5 or 6 people. You don't need that. All you need is one tech. I went to visit a doctor that had applied early on to be on my website to be a part of the Hair Transplant Mentor collection of exceptional hair restoration clinics. And I was supposed to be there for 3 days, and I got there, and I left after the first day. Because one of the things I thought was interesting was it was just him and a tech. That's it. There's no microscope. There was, and that was one of the early on requirements I had. There was a lot of eyeballing things, which kind of disturbed me. But another thing that bothered me was, I don't know, there's a lack of what I felt were requirements that you would need in a surgical environment, such as proper masks. The protocols should have been better. And so, and it's just gotten worse with the proliferation of clinics throughout the world that are not performing hair transplant surgery. They're performing a med spa treatment that they don't think that you should take very seriously, because then it makes it more difficult to part you with your wallet. It's very simple. And a lot of these clinics don't even realize it. They don't, like, they come into this not realizing that they're insulting the finesse of the procedure, if that makes sense. The reality of the surgery being a surgery. And a lot of them don't understand the nuances of naturalness. It is a very refined procedure. The amount of detail and understanding of the detail that's required is beyond any other cosmetic surgery, full stop. There's nothing that compares to it. Because every little angle and direction of these very small organs called hairs matters. If you had a hairline that was relatively natural in appearance, but you have one multi-hair graft in the front and it's angled in the opposite direction from everything else, it'll stand out. It'll be exactly what people zoom in on when they're looking at you. They look up, it'd be distracting. That's just one hair or one follicle. Imagine 60 of them in your hairline. Cross directions, because they don't know what they're doing. They're just randomly making incisions, stuffing and grafts into them, hoping they grow. Because that's the standard, that it grows. Now, that's the standard. And I saw something else that kind of remind me about this subject. The ISHRS, the International Society of Hair Restoration Surgeons, they have a program. I forgot the name of it, but it's part of their Fight the Fight campaign, where they're trying to combat the idea or the existence of clinics where non-doctors are doing the surgery or performing the surgery. The problem with this, just a side note, is that it's actually the standard of the industry where non-doctors are handling grafts. Non-doctors are an integral part of surgery. Every one of the doctors that are behind this Fight the Fight campaign, every one of the doctors that are on the board of the ISHRS that came up with this brilliant idea 5 years ago, originally. 5 years ago? Maybe 4. No, I think it was actually 5 years ago. They all do the same thing to varying degrees, but you're either doing it right or you're doing it wrong. There is no in between. All of them are doing it wrong based on the standards that they've set forth. That's a different story. But they have this program where they will designate different doctors in this program to fix the work that you've had. If you went to one of these clinics that they've deemed to be an offending clinic that don't meet the standards, the faux standards, as I refer to them, that they've set forth, that designate a clinic as being a target of the Fight the Fight campaign. The problem with this is that for the 20 years of its existence, 30 years of its existence, the ISHRS has admitted doctors, actual doctors, into their ranks. They have climbed the ranks to the highest levels on the Board of Governors, officers, secretary, vice president, and president. They have put out some of the absolute worst work. Actual barbarism with the results. Not just plug work, because that was the normal procedure 40 years ago, but just terrible, terrible aesthetics that is rarely rivaled today. The only thing that rivals that today is really the decimation of donor areas in one shot or two shots from clinics that will just blow out the donor due to carelessness. But there are some major offenders in the organization at the highest levels. I can't say that currently, but there's some bad results on a regular basis from some of these people. And for them to create this program where they'll work on patients that had bad results from these clinics as the target of their campaign, and only those patients, and not deal with patients that their own members have been, I don't want to say disfiguring, because I think it's a bit of a stretch in general, but have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Changing in a very bad, negative manner, surgically. It's hypocritical. It is wrong. Burying their heads in the sand. And yeah, it's one of the things that made me think of this, because getting a bad hair transplant is not exclusive to basically third world countries, which the campaign is ultimately targeting. And that's a whole nother story. But a lot of people aren't going to like hearing me say this in the replay. And I'm probably going to get, I know I'm going to get some emails, and I don't care. Like, that's fine. But you guys need to be careful. You really, really do. It's based on my own personal experience. Even today, I know a lot of doctors. You got a lot of YouTubers out there that, they've maybe met some doctors. They may have sat down and interviewed some doctors, but they don't know these doctors. I know these doctors. I know how they operate. I've been in the industry for 20 years. None of these other YouTubers have been. And I know what I know based on being deep in the trenches with these people. As Spencer says, we know where all the bodies are buried, and that's true. And so, yeah, kind of going off on a rant there, but you guys need to be careful. You really do. It can be, hair transplant surgery can and is a wonderful, wonderful experience, or a wonderful thing. Sometimes not such a great experience, but the outcome can be fantastic, because sometimes people are a bit more sensitive to pain and anesthesia, all these little things that can be annoying or uncomfortable. But hair transplant surgery in general can be fantastic if you find the right clinic. Hello, look who's talking to you. Like I have benefited immensely from hair transplant surgery, not just with the results, but my career. And I've been in a position where I can speak the truth more so now than ever. Excuse me. And I don't have to really worry about my my profession, my livelihood. That's part of my livelihood, is telling the truth. I'm sorry, I'm fighting a sneeze. Ooh. So when I say that you guys need to be careful, I am saying it from the heart. I'm saying it from experience. Tell me what you think. Give me a call. 1-833-563-4247. If you got a story you want to share, if you want to talk about the subject matter specifically I'm sharing today, if you got something else you want to talk about, I'm here to talk, and I will give you my honest opinion about anything and everything that you can't get anywhere else. You can only get it right here on the Hair Transplant channel, Monday through Thursday with me right here in the main event, or every Friday with the OG Spencer Coburn on the Bald Truth. And yeah, but if I don't get any calls, I'm out. I got stuff to do. As I was saying to Morty, was it Morty or Nico? One of them. That this is my productivity time. And yeah, if I don't get any calls, then I'm out of here. Let's see, any questions in the chat room? Yeah, Quentin Gamer, when I call, the phone's going to voicemail. Yeah, it goes straight to until I hang up, because when I'm trying to talk to someone, I don't want the sound of the phone call interrupting what they're saying. So I'm not putting you on hold. I'm just hanging up because I don't want there to be any sort of interruptions. But feel free to call back now. Lines are open. It's 833-563-4247. Here to take your questions. Anyone tuning in from UK? Maybe. Looks like you are, Andrew. Mark, great job, Joe. I like you going solo. Thank you. It's fun. It's fun. I feel like I'm able to connect with you guys more because I'm sitting here having to fill the dead air myself. And yeah, it's interesting. I am enjoying it, being solo. It's helping me to hone my skills, yo. Any other questions? Let's see. For the first five, let's see. No, there's a lot of discussion going on in the chat room, which is great. I like seeing that activity. But while you guys are doing that, and while we're waiting on a call, hit the like button, people. Show your support. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. Ring the bell for all notifications. I have secured a great guest, but the problem is it's not going to be till next month, so I'm not going to mention it yet. I alluded to it yesterday, and I was able to message back and forth with this person last night and this morning, and it is confirmed for June 8th, as of today, that this person will be on the main event live with me, taking your questions, and it will be a non-surgical nature. It will be medical treatment in nature. Give you a little hint. It'll be interesting. The guy knows his shit, and he's very experienced in the field of hair loss treatments and research. He's a hell of a nice guy, too. Just a really nice guy. And very concerned about the subject today, actually, about hair transplant surgery. He talked to me once about his concerns about the lack of ethics with a lot of clinics that he's seeing. Genuinely concerned, which was very refreshing. But really good guy. I think that you'll really enjoy the show. I know I will. I love talking to the guy anyway. We talk offline sometimes. And so if you don't want to miss that episode, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell for all notifications so that you are notified when I announce the show. You don't want to miss it. 1-833-563-4247. It is a toll-free call in all of North America, including Mexico, because that is part of North America. Little known fact. Oddly, a lot of people don't realize that, but it's true. But you can also call using the call app of your choice worldwide, including Skype. And making sure, yeah, it's on there. So, but like I said, I'm out of here. No calls. Then that's it. Let's see if there are any other questions. Jason Loftus, I had a bad hair transplant before, but scared to pick up the right doctor and looking at Turkey for surgery. Can you recommend doctors, please? Because I don't want to make another mistake. Jason, give me a call and let's talk about it. It's toll free, 833-563-4247. Let's see, another one. Do you think as FUE develops, more doctors will adapt some kind of advanced donor mapping process like Dr. Zarev does in order to be able to get more grafts? No. I think they'll be lazy unless there is something that comes out that's able to map it more easily and give a summary, kind of like the what's it called? Over at ASMED, their mapping system. I forgot what it's called. That's very advanced. Hampton, I'm almost 6 months after my FU surgery. Dr. Yang made the comment that 6 to 9 months is the biggest difference. You seem to have agreed. Google says 6 to 9 is known as the busting stage. Busting stage? Yeah. Yeah, I've never heard of it called the busting stage. But yeah, 6 to 9 months, that's the bulk of the change that people start to notice. And there are a lot of people that have earlier growth spurts than 6 to 9 months, and that's fine. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's 6 to 9 months is where you see the biggest transition. Even if you've had early growth, you still see a lot of improvements throughout the second half of the year. So yeah. Let's see. Joe, can Finn continue to or spark new growth after 2 years? Or is that quite rare? You know, it's a good question, FSK. The efficacy curve in the original studies showed that it did continue to improve for 2 years before it plateaued. But there was two Japanese studies, maybe two. I don't know why I'm thinking two. Definitely one, where it showed hair counts. It was a large study over the course of 10 years, and after all the variables were taken into account and what needed to be dismissed because of whatever, it was determined that, yeah, hair counts actually continued to improve for 10 years for a lot of patients. Now, is that going to be the case for everyone? Obviously not. But the question is, can it? And the answer is yes, it can. Doesn't mean it will, but it can. Hope that helps. I need to dig that up because I saw that fairly recently. I could only skim it, but I usually go to the conclusions to see what they came up with to save time. Jason, give me a call, man. Let's talk about your issue. 833-563-4247. Phones are open. Any other questions? Milk Trigger says to scroll up. See. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I can't find your question, dude. I'm not going to scroll up. Ask again. Retype it. Yeah. All right, people. I'm going to give you. It's currently 4:15 and 10 seconds. I'm giving you 1 minute. If I don't get a call by 4:16 and 10 seconds, I'm shutting her down until tomorrow on Wednesday, May 10th, where I'll be taking your questions and I might have a guest. We'll see. Hopefully I can get someone lined up. It's difficult because it's the middle of the day and doctors are usually in surgery and, or if they're overseas with some of the doctors I work with over there, it's just too damn late. Big props to Dr. Ujlan Bisher from Istanbul for staying up from 1 a.m. till 3 a.m. her local time to take your questions. That was a great show. I was very, very happy to have her on. It's lovely speaking to her because she's She's very passionate about what she does and good at what she does, of course. Let's see. All right, we got 9 seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, phones are off. No, they're not. Oh, look at this. Okay, someone just squeezed in from New York. Who is this? Hey, you're on the main event. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Joe Tillman. Michael from NYC.
Hello, Michael from NYC. How are you? You just squeezed in. Like it was actually right after I was about to click to turn the phones off, and I saw the screen change showing there was a call, and then I heard it. It's like you got in. You slipped in. Good job.
Well, it's hard for me to call you because I'm walking home, and if I hang up with the YouTube to call you, if I don't get through, there's that whole it's a little game. So I was like, well, F it. Let's see if it works.
Well, you can always call you can always watch the replay after the fact, so you're not missing anything per se. What's your question? How you doing?
Hi, good. This is Michael Leedy from Instagram, by the way.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Doing well. I have a interesting situation to toss your way. I'm just curious if you have what your response is, but maybe you have info that I can share. So I go to see my new doctor, and I ask for a prescription for finasteride. I get it. I started with if I can have Propecia, name brand, then I prefer it, and insurance wasn't going to cover that. That was going to be like $130 a month. So he said, "Why do you want name brands?" And I mentioned you and Spencer, like they always recommend name brand first because in case a company like, let's say you go to him, changes the formula. And he made this comment like, well, they can't change the formula. He's like, where are you getting this information from? And I'm like, well, it's the guys I listen to. I've done a lot of research and this, that, the other thing. But he's talking about how these companies can't change the formulas, or maybe I didn't explain it right, and they can switch maybe providers and who they get it from. Can you elaborate on that?
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and I appreciate the question. We've not been saying that they changed the formula. We've been saying that, like he alluded to, that the supplier can change, and the formula from supplier to supplier might not be the same, because when you have generics, the reference that's given to make you feel better about taking the generic is that it has a bioequivalence to the original medication. What does that even mean, bioequivalence? Well, what it means is, in reality, is if you have a medication that comes out, and we'll say it has 10 new patents that were granted to it because that's what's involved in making this new medication. When it comes time to make a generic, when those patents expire, the FDA does not require every one of those patents to be matched in the generic product. Only some of them. Now, the number of patents that need to be matched as far as the ingredients or the processes that go into it will vary from medication to medication. But there was the explanation was given to me by the owner of a drug market chain, where he explained to me. He said, "Well, the way it works is like Lipitor. Lipitor had like 37 patents upon its release, and over the years, when generics came out, they're only required to meet 13 of those patents as far as what those patents covered in order for their generic to be labeled as a bioequivalent and available for sale on the market. They are not the same as the original, to varying degrees from one product to the next, one drug to the next. So the generics for Propecia might be different from generics for some sort of depression medication. But there was also and that's one aspect of it. So when we talk about it, we're not talking about one manufacturer changing their formula. We're talking about, say, if you get your generics from Walgreens and Walgreens changing the supplier for their quote-unquote generic medication. Because the way that companies work is they'll usually put out a call to bid, say that you're company X and you sell a specific kind of widget, but you don't make it, you just resell it from manufacturers. So you want to find widgets from a manufacturer that's cheaper than what you get from any other manufacturer. So every quarter or so, or every year, manufacturers will put out resellers will put out a call to bid, where manufacturers will say, okay, we'll give you X number of widgets at this particular widget cost for the next year. And then the reseller will get all these bids together and say, okay, well, these people said that they'll do it for this. It's less than the others, and here's some conditions that are more favorable. So this year we're going with these people. Does that make sense?
That's kind of crazy.
And that's the way it works.
So wait.
Welcome to our world.
So wait. Does this mean that if I get on this generic, that down the road, if patents change, they can tweak it to whatever works? Or am I going to be with the same formula if it's the same company? Like, will that stay the same? Like, I guess you're not that person, please.
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question. I don't think that can change, because if there are they do have to sell what they say they're selling. They can't change it unless there's some sort of formal notice to the FDA, and then the FDA looks into it, and I'm sure it costs a lot of money, so they don't want to do that. So they don't do that, as far as I know. What they can do, they can change the filler. They can change some of the non-essential ingredients, which may or may not affect how it actually works. So I was about to reference, and forgive me, I don't remember the specifics of this, but there was, I think it was on 60 Minutes years ago, where they were actually looking at this very same issue, and they're looking at the generics of a particular cardiac medication and how they're being administered in hospitals. And there was a particular cardiac medication that was preferred by hospitals, or maybe it was a particular hospital. And they were finding that the outcome, the desired outcome with these medications was not what they were getting on the generics when compared to the original name brand that they were being dispensed in place of. So it was a big deal. You didn't hear a whole lot about it for some reason. I don't know why, but it was on 60 Minutes or some one of those hard-hitting news shows from back in the day, where they actually, when they actually cared about real journalism. And I need to look that up. Actually, maybe I'll do a show on that. That's. I'm glad you asked that question. But yeah, I mean, in general, the pharma industry is not squeaky clean, as you probably know anyway. But I think that the best way to do things when it comes to medications, like generics, can be fine. There can be nothing wrong with them in some cases. But I know that they're not as effective as name brand in some situations, because I've lived it. I know too many patients that have told me they're on name brand, and they call me up and they say, my Propecia stopped working. I'm like, okay, what do you mean? And over time, I learned to ask them, okay, well, did you switch from name brand to generic? And almost or were you on generic? Yes, is the answer. Okay, did you switch where you get it from, or does the box look different than what you used to get? And every time the answer is yes. Every time. Every time. Something changed. Where they got it from, switching from name brand to generic, or from one generic to another generic, every time. Because there's no consistency, and you got to be like, you want consistency with this stuff. And so the only way, so the reason why I preach this and why Spencer preaches this is because the only way to get consistency is to stick with the original. That way you're eliminating any question about the source, the consistency, the quality, etc., etc. Make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So your
This leads to my
your doctor's right.
follow-up
Like they can't just change the formula, but where you're getting it can change the source of where they're getting it, and that might be a different formula than, you know, company X might be different than company Y as far as how they actually make it.
Follow-up question that springboards off of this.
Mm-hmm.
Where might I go to get the correct information to share with my doctor to say, this is what I couldn't explain to you because I'm not a professional?
Well, you can correct what you're telling them as far as, like, you know, the formula. Like you didn't mean to tell them that the formula changes, but that the source changes. And
right.
I don't know where online you can get that, but
I'll share this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm just going here. Start here.
Yeah, and I you know what? I would actually go to your regular pharmacy. Like, is there someone that you normally deal with at your pharmacy, or is it just random people?
No, it's the I don't know what I want to call it. The facility that I go to for my doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a pharmacy there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's typically the pharmacy that I use.
Okay. So ask them. They may not actually know, because I've run into this before where a pharmacist would be like, well, of course it's the same, because it might be what they're told, and so they believe it. But I've talked to too many pharmacists that know better, that have echoed exactly what I've said. So when I was talking to the owner of that drugstore chain, I was the one that brought it up, and I didn't know who he was. Like, he was just another person I was doing a consultation for. And I brought this up, and he goes, you know what? You're exactly right. I was like, I am? You know? like I thought I was right. And he goes, no, you're exactly right. I was like, okay. He goes, I actually own a pharmacy. Actually, I own a nationwide chain of pharmacies. And then I realized I found out who he was. It's like, oh, okay, this guy knows his shit, obviously.
Right.
And then we had a long conversation. Thankfully, he was my last consult of the day. We talked for like 2 hours. Like, the doctor came in and did his thing and left, and I didn't let him leave. We kept talking, and it was a real eye opener. It was a real eye opener, and ever since that conversation, which verified my suspicions, I've had many more conversations with many more people in the pharmaceutical industry that said, yeah, things change. It's not the same from one to the next. In fact, here's a little known fact. So every pharmacy or pharmaceutical company that sells drugs into the United States, being any foreign-based pharmaceutical companies, they are also at sell into the states at the discretion of the FDA. And how do they do that? Well, the FDA comes and inspects their facilities to make sure they're up to their requirements, their specifications. But guess what? These are not surprise visits. These are not pop visits where it's like, hello, FDA here. I know you weren't expecting us, but we're doing a pop visit. Surprise visit. No, it doesn't work like that. These things are planned in advance. So if there's any sort of shortcomings that helps them to save money throughout their day-to-day operations, they got plenty of time to fix that, to change it for this planned visit before they can go back to doing things the way they normally do. Maybe using one particular area of the facility to make a particular medication, and then making another completely different medication without properly cleansing the area to make sure there's no cross-contamination of ingredients. That's one possible scenario. So if your Propecia is made, for 1 month, and then they have a huge order for, say, an antidepressant of some sort, or, maybe a heart medication. You never know. And then there's some residue that gets that gets crossed over. I mean, it's all speculation. I don't know, but you can't say it's not possible.
Right.
But yeah. Going back to the coming back down to earth for a moment. There are too many cases where I've talked to patients and they say, yes, I was on generic and it was working fine for me. I actually had gains on it. And then I noticed after I started losing my hair that my pharmacy changed the source. It was company A at first. I was taking it for 5 years straight, no problems. And then all of a sudden I noticed that my hair was falling out and I checked my box and it was company B. It wasn't the same company. It's like, WTF, OMG, what is this? There's no other explanation.
They can just switch you, the pharmacy. They can just change it without telling you, or do they have to tell you?
No.
You have to pay attention?
No. It's that's on you. You need to pay attention. You, the consumer, need to pay attention to what your pharmacy is giving you. If you're used to something, now this is I've seen this. I've heard of it more times than I can count, where people don't realize that that's what pharmacies can and actually do on a regular basis. They will get a different supplier for whatever medication, and as long as it doesn't specifically say, I don't know about in the States, but in Canada, in British Columbia, the doctor can write finasteride 5 milligram Proscar specifically to make sure the patient gets 5 milligram Proscar, and then even further say no generic substitutes, and that's province wide as far as I know. That's like a thing. So I'm sure that would be the case in at least some states, maybe not all states, but I'm not up to date on all the regulations in that regard, but I do know that you as a consumer have the right to ask for a specific manufacturer, like name brand versus generic. And you can actually ask your pharmacist, okay, I was on, say, Teva, which is a generic out of Israel. I was taking Teva, but I see that you switched me. Can you order Teva for me? And they usually can. Like they can get get the one that you had before.
Okay. Springboarding off that, if let's say I get assigned a specific generic, can I notice what that is and make sure they don't change it? Like, is that something I can, as a consumer?
Yes, well, that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
well,
okay, perfect.
You can't make sure that they don't change it because as a company, like if they're buying in bulk, then they're going to buy what they're going to buy. Oh. But you can tell your pharmacist, say, look, I really like this. I know it works for me. You may or may not agree with me, but I don't want to switch supplier my medication. So if you ever do bring in a different supplier, is it possible for me to have you order this particular box for me? And they'll probably say yes, and they'll probably say it might cost you a bit more, a few bucks more, because we're not getting a bulk discount on it. Usually, yes. The answer is yes. You're fine.
See, these are great. These are great things.
Yeah.
You've satisfied this question, Joe Tillman.
I do what I can.
You succeeded. Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Good hearing from you. Thanks for the call.
Oh,
what?
Yes, and if I can put in a request, Alba Reyes, can you put her on your list of interviews, please?
Once, if she becomes a hair transplant mentor clinic, then absolutely. I'd be happy to. But she's not at the moment. We'll see.
Oh, because I heard you say her name. She's on my list.
Yeah, no, she's...
Oh, well, there.
Look, I have no problem mentioning clinics that are good, but I'm not going to... I'm not going to extend the benefits of membership to people that aren't members.
I didn't realize it worked that way.
Yeah. I may change that in the future. We'll see. But like the doctor I'm securing for the discussion he can't come on any earlier, but next month on June 8th, if that's possible. That's a Thursday, I think. He's not a member of what I do, but he's also not primarily a hair transplant surgeon. He's a dermatologist that does hair loss research. So that's different. But I think, you know what? You should contact them and say, why aren't you a part of Joe's project? What Joe does?
You know what? She's on my list of interviews. I will do that for you. All right. Hey, everybody listening, I see 19 thumbs up and I see 45 watching. Let's do some thumbs up here, fellas.
I appreciate that.
All right, Joe Tillman, have a good one.
Thanks,
you
buddy.
so much.
All right. Good hearing from you. Take care. Have a good day.
Bye.
833-563-4247, toll free North America, and using your call apps from anywhere in the world, you can give me a shout. Let's talk hair loss. Let's talk hair transplant surgery. Why you shouldn't do it, or maybe why you should. Maybe you got some. Maybe you are experienced enough in your research to where you know what you're doing. Oh, we got an international call. Right on. Hey, you're on the main event. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Joe.
Hello. Is this Chris? Yes.
Yes, it's Chris from Poland. Because I was I was listening. You're talking about ESHRS, and I'm one of the person that reached to them.
To who?
I reached to them for the Fight to Fight campaign. Campaign. Sorry for my English.
Sorry. Who did you reach out to? Who was I talking about?
ESHRS.
ESHR.
You were talking about Fight to Fight campaign.
Oh, yes. ISHRS. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Fight to fight. Yeah.
And remember when I last time told you that some of the doctors proposed me pro bono surgery?
Yes.
They were from ESHRS.
Yes, I know. I remember that. I remembered that when I saw... what made me think of that was I saw the one of their Instagram posts where they're advertising this program, and I did think of your case because I know that you were you had applied to that, and and you had multiple offers for pro bono surgery. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
And if I recall, you didn't care for the approach that any of them suggested for you. Is that right?
No. Dr. Marie Schambach, she proposed me a good treatment.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, Marie Schambach. Yeah.
And she once showed me some cases that were worse than mine. Mm-hmm. So I think she was the one, only the one person that I would trust, that I could trust.
Marie Schambach, I met her in Turkey last year, and we had a long talk, actually, because she had some words that she wanted to share with me, but we ended up having a long talk, and I really enjoyed my talk with her. But I need to make it clear, like I'm not like I think it's a great program as far as helping people that actually need help. I just think it's hypocritical as shit to focus only on people that have gone to mainly bad Turkish clinics. Let's call a spade a spade. That's exactly what they're doing. They're targeting patients of Turkish clinics, even though they say that they're not. It's just bad clinics that aren't doing things the way that they think that they should be done. I think it's hypocritical because there's so many among their own ranks that are doing terrible work, absolutely terrible work. And that's my problem with that. The fact that you had, 4 or 5 clinics reach out to you and offer this to you.
I think even more. And
yeah,
one doctor, even he was from Mexico, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you this. And I might have asked you this before when you first mentioned this. Was there any sort of conditions that you had to meet, like where the use of your photos had to be allowed? None whatsoever.
No. But I told them that I would like to help them to fight, and they can use my photos. And I told them that even I can do with them interview. So it's not a problem. No.
Because that's what I would expect would be one of the conditions for the pro bono surgery. That and honestly, maybe that would be presented later on as you got further along in the process. Maybe not. I don't know. But I find it highly suspect that would not be the case eventually. Just saying. But yeah, so what's the latest, man? What's your question? What's your issue? What do you want to talk about?
I'm really worried about that repair job, and I think I will go to Belgium to Dr. Bizanga.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And because my worries are about the donor area, because they really depleted my donor area, and I can't stop thinking about that. Yeah, because before I had.
I understand. There's so many what ifs. Like what if this happens? What if that happens? Will there be enough? You said you're going to Dr. Bazanga?
I would like to.
You would like to?
I asked them about the I don't know the word in English, but maybe I will go next month or for about 2 months. They just have to make schedule for me.
Mm-hmm.
The date. They have to. I have to find a good date to do that. But
okay, so you're going to go to Belgium and stay for 2 months?
No.
Okay.
Not next month, but the other one. For 2 months.
Yeah.
I will not.
Sorry. Two months from now. You mean 2 months from now?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Sorry. Now I understand. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you want to go for 2 months, good for you. Belgium's a great place. I love Belgium.
I know Belgium. I love Belgium also.
Yeah. You ever been to Bruges?
Yes.
Bruges is amazing. I was blown away.
And I've been in Ghent.
Ghent. Yeah.
Ghent.
I went to. I was excited to go to Bruges. I went up there with some friends that live there, live in Belgium, and I wanted to go there because of the movie In Bruges, which is a fantastic film, and with Colin Farrell and Ray Fiennes.
I know that movie.
Yeah, really good movie, and I was disappointed because there's so many damn tourists. It was like I was at Disney World. It was just insane, and it almost ruined the experience. But I found little gems of the area that I was able to enjoy. But yeah, Bruges is just a beautiful place, though. Anyway, so what was the plan with Dr. Bazanga? What's his approach to your repair?
He told me that he thinks 2 surgeries to take out the grafts.
That's right.
In my front line.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And relocate them in donor area, and then we can make one more time the hairline. So, and I'm 40, and before that surgery in Turkey, I was a really happy guy, and my life was really good. Now, I have to tell that I'm really depressed because what have I done? Because I know that, and I know that now is the best time in my life. Yeah, I want to be younger, and the repair job will take about, I think, maybe 2 years even.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm worried about that. I will struggle one more time the same things as before, because last year was the worst year in my life.
Yeah,
I look like sick person, and people ask me if I've got cancer, because I lost about 12 kilograms. My weight was 59 kilograms,
mm-hmm.
and I had holes in my head for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I didn't really need that hair transplant.
Yeah, and I mean, no one needs a hair transplant as their first hair transplant. That's just a general comment about that. But I know exactly what you mean, because you showed me your before photos, and I agree. Like I said it before, you had this Jude Law look going on that I thought it worked for you, but what's done is done. can't go back and, change time. But currently, I was listening to you speak, and you sound better than you sounded so far in all the conversations we've had.
Yeah, because now I've found the solution. So I know that there is only one way to do things better and repair some things.
And it makes sense to have multiple surgeries, small surgeries, to fine-tune the temple region where he's extracting grafts before you can add into that area again to give you something like you'd want. In my opinion, that third step might not be necessary. If you can restore your temples the way they were, that's 90% of the success right there. If you just remove the bad work from the temples, you'll look. When I talk about repair, my singular goal is for the patient to look normal. They can still look balding, they can still look receding, but as long as they look normal, they don't look like they've had surgical intervention. The hand of man wasn't involved. It's all the hand of God, Mother Nature. That's the whole point. So you may be in a position where the grafts are extracted, you've had enough time to heal, and you don't see any of them trying to fight their way through, because sometimes a lot of times when you have hairlines where the grafts need to be extracted for repair, it depends on how they're placed, but if they weren't placed properly to begin with, which is likely the case, then they can be difficult to remove because the punch, which would be a standard size punch that a good doctor would use, is too small for all the tissue that's in the scalp, where it's kind of bunched up because maybe it's stuffed in there a little bit. Instead of a nice, long, thin insertion, the bottom of it kind of bunches up into a ball, and you can't get all of it. And so maybe one hair will actually regrow. It's not the end of the world. It's normal. That's why 2 surgeries might be ideal just to extract all your grafts. That makes sense. But my feeling is that once those are gone, you might be in a position, Chris, where you look in the mirror and you're like, I'm done. I don't want to go through this again. I look normal again. Why do I want to have more surgery and have more risk? You ever think about that?
But I don't think so, Joe, because you remember when last time I asked you about the grafts that are in the native hair, between native hair.
Mm-hmm.
Because my hair don't act like before now, and I can't do the same
style,
hair design, hairstyle as before. And I think even if they, I can tell you that I'd rather would shave my head for like a bald man before that surgery than had that surgery.
Yeah,
because
no, I know.
I was cutting my hair many times like bald guy, and it was okay for me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm really afraid about this.
Stands. If your temples can be restored to, like you just said, that you didn't actually need a hair transplant. So if your temples can be restored to how they were before surgery, and you have a relatively similar appearance to before surgery, would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
But
then the question
after that.
Then the question becomes, now that I'm back to baseline, do I want to go through with another surgery to try and improve my temples? Even in the hands of a master like Dr. Bazenga, do you want to do that? Or do you want to cut your losses, as they say, and call it good enough, and not go through this anymore? That's a real question. Like I understand the repair so that you can get things back to the way you want and move forward. But I'm a big proponent. If you're going to go through the repair of like reversal, then once you've reversed it and you've removed the grafts that look bad, maybe consider stopping and not trying to have the surgery that you originally wanted to begin with. Like just call it up as a learning experience. You're back to looking pretty normal, and move on. Just something to consider.
Joe, even now I don't look so bad. When I make the hairstyle, I put the hair in the front. Like I look like, I don't know. I always smile because I say to people that now I look like Sergey, like Russian people. I've got like I don't know the name of that hairstyle, but
Caesar.
Okay.
Like a Caesar style. Yeah.
It's like from the Dump and the Dumper, Jim Carrey, the hairstyle of Jim Carrey.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. A bowl cut is what they refer to it. Okay. But just think about that though. I'm not saying you have to make a decision now. I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying that there's a possibility that when you have these grafts removed from the temple region and placed back into your donor, the result might be to so much that you look pretty close to what you look like before you had surgery. I would ask you to consider to just stop there and not have more surgery, because if you achieve that goal of looking normal, ask yourself if that's enough. Ask yourself if you need to go through yet another surgery to try and achieve something that you didn't get the first time around. Like, is it necessary to go through that again once you've established a normalcy with your temples, a naturalness to your temples? It's just something I'm asking you to consider based on what I know about this surgery, because no surgery is guaranteed. None. Zero. Every surgery comes with risk. Doesn't matter who you go to, who's doing the surgery, has zero implication on whether or not there's a guarantee, because there's not. There's not a guarantee, okay?
Okay. But I'm worried about the scar tissues in my temples when they take out the grafts, because they will use the same punch as in the donor area. I didn't ask you before, but I was wonder what are the size of the that machine that punch the grafts. Do the doctors use different size?
Yeah. They'll use a different size. All the machines in the market have the option of changing out the punch size to whatever you want, whatever they want, based on the case of the patient. Many times the one patient will require different size punches for different areas of their scalp. Like in some places it might do a 0.7, other places might do a 0.85, depending on various factors. So look, Dr. Bazenga is good at what he does. He's good at repair. He's good on virgin scalps. He's been doing FUE for a very long time. He knows what he's doing. So, he's a great consideration for repair. No question about it. You're in fantastic hands with him. But he's human. Things happen.
I know, but I've seen his results, and when I was at the hair transplant network, I don't know the name of that forum.
Yeah,
there is no bad job of Dr. Bazenga. Nobody's seen.
Yeah. Let me give you some truth, okay? It doesn't matter where you're looking. It doesn't matter. I can't say this enough, Chris. Every doctor has results that the patient is not happy with. Every doctor, including Dr. Bazenga, including every doctor I work with. It is inevitable. You can't be, in order to be very good in this industry, you have to be performing the surgery for quite a while. Several years before you're genuinely good, consistently. Every doctor, even experienced doctors, have been doing it for 20 years that are at the top of their game, have patients that wish they never had surgery with them. Every single one of them. Okay? That is a fact. Do not ever, ever fall into the trap of thinking that whomever you're choosing is God. Because that's who we'd have to be in order to have a perfect track record. They don't exist. I can't stress that enough. You need to have a healthy bit of skepticism with everything that you ever do when it comes to surgery. It doesn't have to be hair transplant surgery. It can be anything where someone is physically cutting your skin, cutting your body. I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm just being honest, because the last thing I want is for anyone to go into this surgery thinking that nothing can go wrong, that everything will be perfect.
I was thinking like that when I went to Turkey.
Yes.
I was thinking that is just a hair and they will grow the same.
Yep. That's the problem that a lot of people think.
And I was thinking that my case is so easy that nothing bad can happen.
Yeah. Well, anyone online that tells you that is most likely working for a clinic or is has completely fallen into the trap of ideology for the clinic. There's a phenomenon that happens with patients in some situations where they have a surgery. I'm actually seeing it right now. There's a guy on Reddit that had a repair surgery with a doctor, and the way he's speaking about this doctor, it did an okay job, even though I see a 3-hair graft in the guy's hairline. Like, Jesus Christ, what the hell? He's speaking about this guy as if he can do no wrong, when he did wrong on this guy's actual hairline, placing a 3-hair graft. But it happens where a doctor, especially in repair cases, where a doctor has repaired previously bad work from another clinic, and the patient thinks that this doctor, this clinic, is divine, that they actually have their own section that's written about in the Bible. That's how good they are, and they can do no wrong. I've seen it many times, even with clinics I work with, like patients of some of the clinics I work with. I've seen patients worship the ground that they walk on, and that's not healthy. It's misplaced, and it contributes to leading people down the wrong path. It's groupthink that is not healthy, or it can lead to groupthink that's not healthy. So anyway, on that note, look, you're doing things right. You absolutely are doing things right. On the high note here, you're doing everything right. You're taking your time. You're not rushing into this. You found a fantastic doctor that knows what he's doing. Does have a great track record, but is human. And I want you to never forget that. Human. Like, problems happen or mistakes happen. Even small ones. Okay? Understand that. Like, you're in good hands, but just understand that no one's perfect. Does it make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. But you're on the right track, my friend. You're on the right track. Okay. And I'm happy for your progress. Like, the questions that you ask are smart questions, and I can see the progress. I can see the path that you're on as new synapses are made in your brain as you're learning about what you're going through, and the questions that you need to ask. Yeah. Sorry.
I have to tell you that I saved 3 persons from Poland to go to Turkey, because now everybody asks me about the hair transplants in Turkey, and I saved them because one of my friends wanted to go to that one of the cheap clinics, and I took his phone. I called to that clinic, asked them 3 questions, and I tell my friend, look how they are lying, that surgery will make doctor.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Well, good for you and good for them. But just be clear, you didn't save them from Turkey. You saved them from some bad clinics in Turkey because there are some really good clinics in Turkey.
I know.
Okay. Just want to
That's why
clarify that.
I told one of my friends that he should go to Dr. Bitzer. Bitzer.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I can tell you also that last year I reached also to Dr. Bitzer, and some of her consultants, when they saw my photo before surgery, she told me that if I come to Dr. Bisher clinic, they will told me that I don't need any hair transplant.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That should tell you a lot of things. that was the right answer. Okay. Chris.
Okay.
Thank you for calling. As always, great to hear from you. You're a fantastic final call of the day. And I know it's late there in Poland, but thanks for calling. And
I'm listening to your show now every day. So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. You take care, okay?
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, that's it for today. People, thank you for tuning in. Today's show, Tuesday, was it May 9th? A lot of great calls, interesting calls. I hope you like the subject. Let me know down in the comments section, not in the chat room, but down in the comments section, what you thought of today's show as far as the content, as far as the discussions, and the message that I was putting out there, because this is more of a personal subject for me. I mean, it's all personal for me because I've lived through so much of this, but the emotional aspect of this and how it affects people negatively, I think it's highlighted perfectly by that last caller. Chris is a perfect example of what's going on today, where people are not thinking about this before they actually jump into it. He just knew that he wanted to get his situation, quote unquote, fixed. It didn't need to be fixed. You just heard him say that a reputable hair restoration physician, Dr. Özlem Bisher in Istanbul, turned him down, or would have turned him down if he had shown up. I think it's an important subject, but again, let me know down in the comment section if you're watching this live, and if you're watching this as a rerun later on. Down in the comment section, let me know. Don't forget to hit the like button. I appreciate all of your support. I am here doing this at no charge, making nothing. I'm actually losing money. I could be out there hustling and doing something else with one of my businesses, but I'm not. I'm here talking to you guys, which is fun. I love talking to you guys when you call in. I appreciate every single one of you, also in the chat room, and those of you that are watching and listening in the podcast section. So I am out of here. We'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. See ya.